My wife sent me a text from Las Vegas that changed everything. It wasn't a picture of the scenery or a "miss you" message. It was a photo of her standing next to her coworker, Brad, in front of a wedding chapel. The caption read, "Just married my soulmate. You're pathetic, by the way." Most men would have smashed their phone. Most men would have screamed or broken down crying. But me. I didn't shed a single tear. I just replied with one word, "Cool." And then, I systematically destroyed her entire life before she even woke up the next morning. Welcome back to Inspiration Seeker. If you enjoy stories about instant karma, sweet revenge, and people getting exactly what they deserve, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment down below saying, "Justice served," to let me know you're ready. Trust me, you don't want to miss the ending of this one. Let's get into the story. To understand how satisfying the ending is, you have to understand what my life was like before that text message hit my phone. I'm Ethan. I'm 32, and I work as a senior software architect in Seattle. In this city, if you aren't grinding, you're drowning. I was definitely grinding. I worked 60-hour weeks, staring at code until my eyes burned, just so I could provide a perfect life for my wife, Vanessa. We had been married for 3 years, and looking back, I was the only one participating in the marriage. Vanessa was 29, worked a mid-level marketing job that barely covered her brunch habits, and had a taste for luxury that my salary was solely responsible for funding. I didn't mind it at first. I loved her. I wanted her to be happy. But lately, things had been cold. It started on a Thursday evening. Vanessa came into my home office while I was in the middle of a deployment. She didn't knock. She just leaned against the doorframe and dropped the news. "I have to go to Vegas this weekend for a conference," she said, scrolling through her phone, not even looking at me. "Vegas? On a weekend?" I asked, spinning my chair around. "I thought the marketing summit was in Chicago next month." She finally looked up, rolling her eyes. "Plans change, Ethan. It's a team-building retreat mixed with some client networking. Brad organized it. It's mandatory." Brad. That name always made my skin crawl. Brad was the sales manager at her company, a guy who wore too much cologne, drove a leased BMW he couldn't afford, and smiled with too many teeth. But I trusted my wife. Or at least, I tried to. By Friday morning, the red flags were waving right in my face, but I chose to ignore them. When she was packing, I noticed she wasn't packing business suits or blazers. Her suitcase was filled with sequined dresses, club heels, and expensive lingerie I had bought her but she had never worn for me. "That seems like a lot for a work conference," I noted gently as she zipped up a bag that was bursting at the seams. Vanessa snapped immediately. "God, stop being so controlling, Ethan. We're going to dinners and shows. I need to look presentable. Why do you always have to make everything an interrogation?" She turned the guilt back on me so fast I barely had time to process it. That was her specialty, making me feel like the bad guy for asking basic questions. She kissed me on the cheek, a cold, dry peck that felt more like a dismissal than a goodbye, and walked out to her Uber. I watched the car drive away into the rainy Seattle gray. I stood there alone in the house I paid for, with a knot in my stomach that I couldn't explain. I told myself I was just being paranoid. I told myself to focus on work. I had no idea that while I was sitting there worrying about her safety, she was already on a flight to Nevada, planning to blow up our entire life. Saturday rolled around, and the silence in the house was deafening. Usually, weekends were our time, brunch at Pike Place, maybe a hike if the weather held up, or just binge watching a show on the couch. But this Saturday, I was alone with a cold box of Thai takeout and a laptop screen full of JavaScript. I told myself I was being productive, getting ahead on a project for Monday, but really, I was just trying to distract myself from the radio silence coming from Vanessa. She hadn't texted me since she landed. No checked-in message, no good-night call. Nothing. I tried not to be that clingy husband who double-texts, so I just focused on my work. It was exactly 11:42 p.m. when my phone vibrated on the mahogany desk. The buzzing sound echoed in the empty room like a gunshot. My heart actually jumped a little. I thought, finally, she's checking in. Maybe she lost her charger. Maybe she was just busy with the team building. I reached over, flipped the phone face up, and saw a notification from Vanessa. It wasn't a text, it was an image attachment with a caption. I unlocked the screen, expecting maybe a group selfie of her marketing team raising cocktails or a picture of the Bellagio fountains. What I saw made my blood run cold, and then instantly boil. It was a photo taken at night, illuminated by the tacky neon glow of a wedding chapel. You know the kind, the cheesy, drive-through places on the Vegas Strip. In the center of the frame was Vanessa, wearing a short white dress I'd never seen before, holding a bouquet of plastic flowers. Next to her was Brad, looking sweaty and smug in a rented tuxedo that didn't quite fit his shoulders. They were holding up their left hands, showing off matching cheap silver bands. But it was the caption that really knocked the wind out of me. It didn't say, "Just kidding," or, "Look at this prank." It read, "Just married my soulmate. We are done. You're pathetic compared to him. Don't wait up." I stared at the pixels until they started to blur. I read the words once, twice, 3 times. The world seemed to stop spinning. My wife, the woman whose health insurance I paid for, the woman whose name was on the lease of the car sitting in my driveway, had just sent me photographic evidence that she had married another man. For the first 30 seconds, I felt like I was having a heart attack. The betrayal was so sharp it was physical. But then, as the shock wore off, something else took over. My brain shifted from emotional husband to software architect. I looked at the problem logically. She wasn't just cheating on me. She had just committed a crime. We were legally married in the state of Washington. We hadn't filed for separation. We hadn't even discussed divorce. By marrying Brad in Nevada, she had just documented her own felony, bigamy. She thought she was crushing me. She thought I would fall apart. She had no idea she had just handed me the weapon I would use to destroy her. I sat there in the glow of my 3 monitors, the humming of my computer tower the only sound in the room. A younger, more naive version of myself would have called her immediately. I would have screamed, begged for an explanation, or demanded to speak to Brad. But looking at that photo, seeing the absolute malice in her eyes and the arrogance in his, something inside me just snapped shut. It wasn't a break, it was a switch being flipped off. I realized in that moment that Vanessa wanted a reaction. She thrived on drama. She wanted me to blow up her phone with angry texts so she could show them to Brad and say, "See? Look how crazy and abusive he is. I had to leave him." She wanted to be the victim of my rage to justify her own betrayal. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. I wasn't going to give her anything ever again. My thumbs hovered over the screen. I didn't type a paragraph. I didn't type a question mark. I typed 4 letters. Cool. I hit send. I watched the screen. The read receipt appeared instantly. She was staring at her phone, waiting for the explosion. Instead, she got indifference. Almost immediately, the 3 little typing dots appeared. They danced for a long time, then stopped, then started again. She was confused. She was angry that I wasn't angry. Finally, her next barrage of texts came through. "Cool. That's all you have to say. Your wife just left you for a better man, and all you say is cool. You really are a loser. Brad is laughing at you right now. Don't expect me to come back. I'm sending for my things next week." I read them with the detachment of a scientist looking at a bug under a microscope. Every insult she threw was just more confirmation that I was doing the right thing. I didn't reply to any of the follow-up messages. I let them sit there, piling up, creating a digital paper trail of her harassment and confession. I took a deep breath and leaned back in my chair. The sadness was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. She thought she was free. She thought she was starting a new life of luxury with her soulmate. But she had forgotten one very important detail. Vanessa didn't actually own anything. She lived in my house. She drove a car leased in my name. And most critically, she was currently partying in Las Vegas using credit cards that were attached to my bank account. She wanted to play games? Okay. But she forgot that I'm an architect. I know how to build things up, and I definitely know how to tear them down. It was time to initiate the demolition. I turned my attention back to my monitors. Coding was done for the night. It was time for some financial triage. I opened a new browser window and logged into our main banking portal. The dashboard loaded, and I could see the damage happening in real time under the Pending Transactions tab. It was sickening. In just the last 6 hours, there were charges for a suite at the Venetian, a $1,200 dinner at a high-end steakhouse, and a VIP table charge at a nightclub. Brad wasn't paying for his new bride. I was paying for my wife to celebrate leaving me. I clicked on the Credit Card Management tab. We had 3 main cards, a Platinum Amex and 2 high-limit Visa signatures. Technically, these were joint cards in usage, but legally? I was the primary account holder on every single one. Vanessa was just an authorized user. She had a card with her name on it, but the debt, and the control, belonged to me. I didn't hesitate. I went down the list, one by one. Amex Platinum ending in 4092. Freeze card. Chase Sapphire ending in 1188. Report lost/stolen. Bank of America Visa ending in 3321. Deactivate authorized user. Click. 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 Within 30 seconds, the plastic rectangles in her purse transformed from unlimited spending power into worthless scrap plastic. But I wasn't done yet. I navigated to our joint checking account. This was trickier because Washington is a community property state. If I took everything, a judge could penalize me later. I had to be smarter than her. I calculated exactly 50% of the balance, down to the cent. I transferred my half into a separate, personal high-yield savings account that she had no access to. I left her half in there, which was fair, but I knew Vanessa. That money would be gone in a day if she tried to maintain Brad's lifestyle. I sat back and interlaced my fingers behind my head. The digital pipeline to Las Vegas was officially shut off. They were probably sitting in a booth right now, laughing, maybe ordering another round of Dom Perignon for the table. I smiled for the first time that night, imagining the look on the waiter's face when he returned to their table with that polite, pitying smile to say, "I'm sorry, sir, but this card has been declined." After handling the finances, I stood up and walked around the living room. I looked at the photos on the mantel, the throw pillows she picked out, the life we had built. It all felt like a stage set for a play that had just been cancelled. I realized I didn't want her walking back through that front door ever again. I didn't want her key to work in the lock. Technically, kicking a spouse out of the marital home can be a legal nightmare. But again, I'm a man who reads the fine print. I bought this house in the Queen and neighborhood 3 years before I met Vanessa. My name is the only one on the deed. My name is the only one on the mortgage. In the eyes of Washington state law, this house was a separate premarital asset. She was just a guest who had overstayed her welcome. I Googled 24-hour emergency locksmith Seattle and dialed the first number with 5 stars. It was 1 a.m., but for triple the standard rate, a guy named Mike was in my driveway within 45 minutes. While Mike was drilling out the front deadbolt, I went to the bedroom. I didn't cry. I didn't tear up her clothes. I grabbed a box of heavy-duty black contractor bags from the utility closet and went to work. I swept her entire existence into those bags. The expensive clothes, the shoes, the jewelry I had bought her, everything. I wasn't gentle, but I wasn't destructive either. I didn't want to give her any grounds to sue me for damaging her property. I was methodical. Bag 1, tops and blouses. Bag 2, pants and skirts. Bag 3, bathroom toiletries and makeup. I didn't throw them on the front lawn like you see in the movies. That's rookie stuff. It looks trashy and invites the neighbors to call the cops. Instead, I hauled all 15 bags into the garage. I stacked them neatly against the wall, next to the lawnmower. By 3 a.m., Mike the locksmith was done. I had shiny new keys in my hand. The garage was locked. The house was locked. The alarm code was changed. I stood in the silent, empty hallway. The house felt different now. It didn't feel lonely. It felt secure. It felt like a fortress. I was safe inside, and the chaos she had created was firmly locked out. I poured myself a single glass of whiskey, turned off the lights, and prepared for the storm that I knew was coming from the desert. I barely had time to finish my whiskey before the digital fireworks started. It was around 3:30 a.m. in Seattle, which meant the night was just winding down in Vegas. My phone, which had been silent for hours, suddenly lit up on the coffee table. It wasn't a text from Vanessa. It was a push notification from my banking app. Transaction declined. The Venetian Resort front desk, $2,400. I smirked. They must have tried to extend their stay in the suite or upgrade to a better room to celebrate. 10 seconds later, another ping. Transaction declined. The Venetian Resort front desk, $2,400. They were trying it again. They probably thought it was a chip error or a system glitch. Then came the frantic flurry of attempts. Transaction declined. ATM withdrawal, $500. Transaction declined. Uber. The reality was setting in. The financial umbilical cord had been cut, and they were stranded in the desert with nothing but a maxed-out credit limit and a hangover. Then, the phone calls started. Vanessa's name flashed across the screen. I watched it ring until it went to voicemail. Immediately, she called again. And again. I let every single one go through to the recorder. I wasn't avoiding her out of fear. I was avoiding her because I had nothing left to say. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me, and I listened to the first voicemail on speaker. The background noise was chaotic, casino slot machines ringing and people shouting. Vanessa sounded breathless and angry. "Ethan? Pick up the phone. The cards aren't working. The hotel is threatening to call security if we don't put a deposit down. Call the bank right now and tell them it's not fraud. Brad forgot his wallet at home, so I need you to fix this. Fix it now." I almost laughed out loud. Brad forgot his wallet. Classic. The guy was a baller on Instagram but didn't have a credit card of his own with a $2,000 limit? It was pathetic. The second voicemail, 5 minutes later, was different. The anger was replaced by high-pitched panic. "Ethan, seriously, this isn't funny. We can't get an Uber. We can't check out properly. Why did you move the money from the checking account? You can't just strand me here. Pick up." I didn't listen to the rest. I didn't care how they got home. They could take a bus, they could hitchhike, or Brad could sell that cheap tuxedo. It wasn't my problem anymore. I flipped the little switch on the side of my iPhone to silence, activated Do Not Disturb mode, and climbed into my bed. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully, knowing that the chaos was strictly partially to Nevada. I woke up abruptly at 8 a.m. on Sunday. It wasn't the sunlight streaming through the blinds that woke me. Seattle was living up to its reputation with a heavy, gray drizzle. No, what woke me was the sound of heavy fists pounding on my front door. It sounded like a SWAT raid. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes, threw on a robe, and checked the security camera feed on my phone before I even left the bedroom. My stomach dropped, not from fear, but from pure annoyance. There were 2 uniformed Seattle police officers standing on my porch. And behind them, looking like wet rats shivering in the rain, were Vanessa and Brad. They had made it back. I have to give them credit. Hate is a powerful fuel. They must have maxed out whatever emergency cash they had or pawned something to catch the red-eye flight home. I walked downstairs calmly. I didn't rush. I unlocked the new deadbolt and swung the door open. The cold morning air hit me, mixing with the tension that was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Ethan Mitchell?" the taller officer asked. He had his hand resting near his belt, his face stern. "That's me," I said, leaning against the doorframe, blocking the entrance. "How can I help you, officers?" Before the cop could answer, Vanessa lunged forward from behind him. She looked terrible, mascara running down her cheeks, hair frizzy from the humidity, wearing the same clothes from the photo. "He locked me out," she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "He changed the locks illegally. He stole my money. Arrest him. He's abusive." She was putting on an Oscar-worthy performance. If I didn't know her, I might have believed her. She was hyperventilating, shaking, playing the terrified victim perfectly. Brad stood behind her, avoiding eye contact with me, looking at his shoes. He had the nerve to show up at my house, but he didn't have the guts to look me in the eye. The officer stepped between us, holding up a hand to silence Vanessa. He turned his attention back to me, his expression unamused. "Sir, this woman claims she lives here and that you've illegally evicted her following a domestic dispute. In Washington state, you cannot lock a resident out of their home without a court order. Is she on the lease or the deed?" I looked the officer dead in the eye. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get defensive. I just prepared to drop the bombshell that would turn this entire situation on its head. I didn't flinch at the officer's question. I knew this was the pivotal moment. If I lost my cool now, they would force me to let her back in, and I would lose all my leverage. "Officer, I understand the tenancy laws," I said, my voice steady and low. However, the situation has changed drastically in the last 24 hours due to the actions of that woman and the man standing behind her. I pulled my phone out of my robe pocket. I had the screenshot ready, the photo of Vanessa and Brad smiling in front of the chapel with that caption, "Just married my soulmate." I handed the phone to the tall officer. "She claims this is her home. But yesterday evening, she sent me this communication from Las Vegas. As you can see, she explicitly states, and provides photographic evidence, that she has married Mr. Brad Miller here." The officer looked at the phone, squinting at the bright screen against the gray morning light. He read the text out loud, mumbling the words, "Just married. You're pathetic." He looked up at Vanessa, then at Brad, then back at the phone. "Is this true, ma'am?" the officer asked, tilting the phone towards her. "Did you get married yesterday?" Vanessa's face went pale. She stammered, Well, yes, but we were just, it doesn't count. We haven't filed the papers yet. I still live here." I interjected immediately, cutting off her excuses. "Officer, in the eyes of the law, she has confessed to bigamy. We are still legally married in this state. By marrying him, she has committed a felony. Furthermore, by stating, 'We are done,' and leaving the state to marry another man, she has voluntarily abandoned the marriage and the residence." I took a step closer to the officer, lowering my voice to a confidential tone. "Honestly, officer, I don't feel safe letting her in. She is erratic, she's committing crimes, and she brought a strange man to my doorstep who she claims is her husband. I have valuables inside. I am not comfortable allowing a criminal and her accomplice entry into my property." The atmosphere on the porch shifted instantly. The officers were no longer looking at a poor, evicted wife. They were looking at a messy civil dispute involving potential fraud. The tall officer handed me back my phone and turned to his partner. They exchanged a look that said, "This is way above our pay grade." Vanessa started to scream again, realizing the narrative was slipping away from her. "He's lying. This is my house. You can't listen to him." But the damage was done. My text message, "Cool," was just the jab. Showing that photo to the police was the knockout punch. If there are two words that police officers love to use to get out of paperwork, they are civil matter. And I had just handed them a perfect excuse to use them. The tall officer adjusted his belt and turned to Vanessa. The sympathy was gone from his eyes. "Ma'am, look, he has proof of a marriage to another individual, and the deed to this house is solely in his name. We cannot verify your residency status right now without a court order, especially with the conflicting marital status. We can't force him to let you inside." Vanessa's jaw dropped. "So you're just going to leave me on the street? In the rain? We can't intervene in a civil dispute, the officer repeated, stepping back. You'll need to contact a lawyer or a judge on Monday to sort this out. In the meantime, Mr. Mitchell is not obligated to grant you access. I stepped in, playing the role of the benevolent ex-husband. Officer, I'm not a monster. All of her personal belongings, clothes, toiletries, essentials, are already packed in bags in the detached garage. I can unlock the garage remotely so she can retrieve her things. But she is not stepping foot in my main residence. The officer nodded, clearly relieved. That sounds reasonable to me. Ma'am, you can get your things, but if you try to force entry into the main house, we will have to arrest you for breaking and entering. Do you understand? Vanessa looked at Brad, hoping he would step up, maybe yell at the cops, maybe defend her honor. But Brad was staring intently at a wet patch of grass, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else on the planet. He knew they had lost. He knew he was standing next to a woman who was now homeless, cashless, and legally radioactive. Fine. Vanessa shrieked, stomping her foot like a toddler. We don't need this house. Brad has a penthouse. We're going there. I suppressed a laugh. Brad didn't have a penthouse. He had a one-bedroom apartment near the airport that smelled like gym socks. But I didn't correct her. Good luck with that, I said simply. I stepped back and closed the heavy oak door. Click. I threw the deadbolt. Thud. I listened for a moment. I could hear muffled shouting outside, then the sound of the garage door opening, followed by the dragging of heavy plastic bags across concrete. 10 minutes later, I heard Brad's car sputter to life and drive away. Silence returned to my fortress. I didn't celebrate yet. I walked straight to my office and picked up the phone. It was Sunday, but I had the personal cell number of a divorce attorney named Marcus. Marcus was expensive, the kind of lawyer who charged you for thinking about calling him, but he was a shark. Marcus, I said when he picked up. It's Ethan. I'm sending you a retainer. My wife just committed bigamy in Nevada, and I have the pictures. I want to file for an annulment and immediate restraining order. How fast can we destroy her? Monday mornings usually drag, but I woke up with the energy of a kid on Christmas. The legal wheels were already turning thanks to Marcus, but I had one more loose end to tie up. You see, Vanessa and Brad didn't just share a bed, they shared an office building. Brad was a manager, and Vanessa was a subordinate in a department that worked closely with his. Most corporate handbooks have a very strict section about that kind of thing. It's called a conflict of interest, or more specifically, a non-fraternization policy. I put on my best suit, grabbed a coffee, and drove to their corporate headquarters. I wasn't there to cause a scene. I wasn't there to yell. I was there on a purely administrative mission. I walked up to the front desk and asked to speak with the HR director, a woman named Linda who I had met briefly at a few company holiday parties. When she came out, she looked confused to see me. Ethan? Is everything okay? Vanessa is at her desk, she said, gesturing toward the elevators. Oh, I'm not here to see Vanessa, I said, putting on a polite, confused smile. I actually needed to ask a clarification question regarding spousal benefits. I didn't want to make a mistake on my tax forms. Linda frowned. Okay, what's the issue? I pulled out a printed copy of the Las Vegas photo, the one with the chapel, the rings, and the timestamp. I slid it across the desk. Since Vanessa married Brad Miller, your sales manager, on Saturday, I assume she needs to be moved to his health insurance plan immediately? I just don't want to be double billing the insurance companies if she's covered by her new husband's policy here at the firm. Linda's eyes went wide. She looked at the photo, then at me. Wait, Brad Miller? They got married? Does anyone else know about this? I assumed everyone knew, I lied smoothly. They sent this to me. I just wanted to make sure the paperwork was clean. You know how strict the policy is about undisclosed management relationships. Linda's face turned sheer white. In the corporate world, An undisclosed sexual relationship between a manager and a subordinate is a lawsuit waiting to happen. It's a liability nightmare. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Ethan," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. She didn't look at me anymore. She was already typing furiously on her phone. I walked out of the building and sat in my car across the street. I waited. It didn't take long. About an hour later, I saw two security guards escorting a man and a woman out the front revolving doors. Brad was carrying a small cardboard box, his face bright red. Vanessa was empty-handed, arguing with the guard who was taking her badge. They stood on the curb, fired, humiliated, and publicly exposed. In one morning, they had lost their incomes, their reputations, and their access to the corporate ladder. I took a sip of my coffee. It was the best cup of coffee I had ever tasted. The wheels of the legal system usually turn slowly, but when you have a smoking gun like I did, they move a lot faster. 2 months later, we were sitting in a mediation room at the King County Superior Court. The air was stale, smelling of old coffee and desperation. Vanessa sat across the long table from me. She looked different. The arrogance from the Vegas photo was completely gone. She looked tired. Her designer clothes were replaced by a modest, inexpensive dress, a calculated move by her lawyer to make her look like a sympathetic, destitute housewife. Her lawyer, a guy who looked like he chased ambulances on the weekends, started the meeting with a ridiculous demand. "My client has become accustomed to a certain standard of living during the marriage," he said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "She has no current income, having been wrongfully terminated from her employment. We are asking for $3,000 a month in spousal support for the next 5 years, plus half the equity in the Queen and home." I didn't say a word. I just looked at my lawyer, Marcus. Marcus didn't even blink. He adjusted his glasses and opened a thick file folder. "Counselor," Marcus said calmly, "your client didn't just leave the marriage. She attempted to contract a second marriage in the state of Nevada while still legally wed to Mr. Mitchell. She then sent this communication." Marcus pulled out the blown-up print of the text message. It was the centerpiece of our defense. "Just married my soulmate. You're pathetic. This constitutes spousal abandonment and clear evidence of infidelity," Marcus continued. "Furthermore, regarding her termination, she wasn't wrongfully fired. She was terminated for cause due to a policy violation involving the very man she claimed to marry in this photo. My client is not responsible for subsidizing her poor career choices or her illegal romantic endeavors." Vanessa started to cry. It was the same fake cry she used on the porch, but this time, nobody was buying it. "But I have nothing," she sobbed. "Brad left me. I have debt. I have rent to pay." That was the first time I heard the confirmation. Brad, the soulmate, had bailed the moment the money ran out and the job was gone. Classic. The mediator, a retired judge with zero patience for drama, looked over his glasses at Vanessa. "Ma'am, looking at this evidence, you voluntarily left the marital home to start a new life with another man. You declared the marriage done in writing. You cannot expect the court to award you alimony from a man you publicly humiliated and abandoned." The negotiations lasted less than an hour. We reached a settlement that was brutal for her but fair for me. I kept the house. I kept my retirement accounts. I kept my savings. Vanessa walked away with the debt from the credit cards in her name and her personal belongings, the ones I had packed in the garbage bags. As we signed the final papers, she looked up at me, her eyes red and rimmed with dark circles. "Ethan, please. I made a mistake. Can't we just talk?" I capped my pen, stood up, and looked at her one last time. "You didn't make a mistake, Vanessa. You made a choice. And like you said in your text, we are done." It's been 6 months since I signed those papers, and life looks a lot different now. I finally got around to renovating the house, ripped out the beige carpets Vanessa insisted on and put in the hardwood floors I always wanted. The house doesn't feel like a fortress anymore, it feels like a home. I even started dating again. Her name is Sarah. She's a pediatrician, she has her own life, her own money, and most importantly, she hates drama. It's refreshing to be with someone who asks, "How was your day?" and actually means it. As for the happy couple, well, the Grapevine is a small place in Seattle. I bumped into a former colleague of Brad's at a coffee shop last week. He told me the whole ugly truth. Brad and Vanessa didn't even make it a month. Once the adrenaline of the affair wore off and the reality of unemployment set in, the soulmates turned on each other. Brad realized Vanessa wasn't a rich housewife he could leech off of, and Vanessa realized Brad was just a broke guy with a leased BMW and no job prospects. He ghosted her, blocked her number and moved to Portland to live with his parents. And Vanessa. I actually saw her once, from a distance. I was walking downtown, and I saw her working the counter at a generic clothing chain, the kind of place she used to make fun of. She looked exhausted, folding t-shirts under harsh fluorescent lights. She spotted me through the glass window. For a second, our eyes locked. I saw regret. I saw misery. I saw a woman who realized she had traded a diamond for a piece of broken glass. She reached for her phone, maybe to text me, maybe to apologize. I didn't wait to find out. I just kept walking. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't even feel happy about her downfall. I just felt indifferent. She texted me later that night, "I miss us." I looked at the message. I thought about the Vegas photo. I thought about the police at my door. And then, I did exactly what I did 6 months ago. I didn't reply. I just blocked the number, put my phone down, and went back to living my life. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't screaming or fighting. It's silence. And trust me, life is a lot cooler when you cut out the toxic noise.